Microsoft's newest gaming console, the Xbox Series X, which came out in November of 2020. And it brought with it a lot of new features, one of which was faster loading times for games, and its quick resume feature, which allows you to resume the games even if you weren't currently playing them, and it would start up a lot faster. It might also be pertinent to talk about the controllers and how there really isn't that much of a difference between them.
It's a masterpiece!
The one on the left is the Xbox One controller, the last console, and the one on the right is the Xbox Series X controller. So there's only really one difference between them, and that's the share button you see in the middle. I mean, the more I look at this console, the more it just looks like a PC than, an actual gaming console. Now, honestly, when I'm playing it, it sounds like it too. So it looks like Microsoft's kind of getting back to its roots in that way, I guess you could say. Something else that's nice about the console is that it's also backwards compatible with every Xbox One game and a lot of Xbox 360 games. It's something not a lot of companies do anymore. And I'd argue the games that you can play on the Xbox Series X, or the older games, they still look pretty good. The defining feature of the console is that the download times for games were a lot faster. Even on DukeNet's Wi-Fi, I was still able to download games pretty fast, or at least a lot faster than I could with the Xbox One. Definitely something I noticed. When I talk about the Xbox Series X, I have to talk about how everything is inherently more expensive with the console. Starting with the console itself, it's $500 right now. When I got it, it was more, closer to $600. And the controllers themselves cost like upwards of $50, $60, $70. You have to spend so much before you're even, able to play the console. I also have to talk about the games, which are becoming more expensive themselves. New games used to be $59.99. Now most of the new ones are $69.99. It's not much of a difference, but $10 extra plus tax does add up after a while. And when talking about how expensive the console is, it's hard not to mention how expensive most of the headsets are. And for me, they're really not that durable. I've had this headset for a while, to be fair, but I feel like I have to keep buying them just because they really don't last that long. It's just crazy how I have these 4 N64 controllers which haven't really been sold mainstream for 15 to 20 years, and yet $50 can get 4 of these, $50 can only get 1 of these. And I know this is a current console, but it's still crazy to think about how expensive controllers are now. These controllers even back then were not that expensive. And although I think it's way better graphically than the Xbox One, I don't really know that it's worth all the extra money to me. I notice a difference graphically, I notice a difference speed-wise when playing games, but I don't really know if it's worth the price right now. And this is my entire Xbox Series X collection of games, at least unique to the console, not other games I already had on my previous console. So there's really not that many games. There's really not that many games for sale in general, and I don't really have any. I only have 3. But it still costs a lot of money. These games still cost around $200 combined. I understand they take a lot to make, but it's just crazy to think how much money it really costs to play. For comparison, this is my N64 gaming collection, and yes, I understand they're older games, but I still think that proves my point that these games cost around the same it cost for me to have 3 Xbox Series X games. And these games came out the better part of 20 years ago, and they stopped producing them maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever it was. So these games still cost less combined than those 3 did. So I had another glitch when I first had it, when the disk drive wouldn't properly read my discs, which was really frustrating. And I know a lot of other people had similar problems. It really wasn't that hard of a fix, but it really didn't feel like it was something that warranted, even happening in the first place, and it was definitely frustrating. And honestly, I feel like the disk drive isn't used that much anyway. It feels like the video game industry is going more digital than it is, physical copies. So I guess it's really not that big of a deal, but when I got physical copies for Christmas and wasn't able to play them, that was pretty annoying. Another thing I don't really like about the console, this is kind of more about gaming in general, but I don't really like how, if you're not online, you really can't play games, or you really can't do anything in the games. It's really not unique to the Xbox Series X, but just something I noticed in general, and it kind of it's just kind of weird. I guess it's just, changing times. I don't know if I should attribute it specifically to the console, but just something I noticed. And I kind of realize I sound like a little bit of a Karen complaining about all these things, especially for someone that got the console and the games and the controllers as a present, but that doesn't mean I haven't had fun playing it. I've definitely had fun playing it. I play it a lot, and I'm definitely glad I have it. I just say think a lot of my problems with the console come from the fact that it's just a little bit too early to buy it. And that's really the one thing I would say is to wait before you buy it. I don't really think it's worth it to buy it right now in its current state.